Look at it at a broad level, is we've had 10 years of an administration that voted in the no camp of this constitution, and we have a continuation of that. And this therefore becomes a mindset issue, an ideological posture towards the constitution. And a lot of what is challenged has to do with functional roles, with mandates, with power. We've moved away from the all-powerful presidency and the all-powerful national government to devolved government. So some of these stoppages have to do with government encroachment by the national executive of functions that don't belong to them. And, public participation goes in line with that, obviously. And so government is, I think, we are in a struggle. And then, they say the process of democracy is an ongoing negotiation and struggle. And that negotiation is taking place in the courts because government is not listening to public participation. I think Dr. Rugo, this is my colleague, Dr. Rugo. We take him so for granted. We know he's a gem, but we call him Rugo. Yeah. As he mentioned, the housing levy. The housing levy has been I think a lesson in how not to make policy. One, there was no policy. Two, it was a tax, then it was a levy, this is government making important decisions that impact household incomes on the fly, and then coming up with solutions that are criticized and critiqued by everybody, including their own experts. So housing levy, I agree, is an example of government getting into the public, of a need, because we have a need to convert rent payment into mortgages so that you can build up ownership of houses, of homes. But how do you do that? Is it by governments entering into that space or government enabling? So there are then also this, the single, the pay bill number, the digitization process where even university students are supposed to put money. You then ask, you have principles in the Constitution of decentralization, first of all. What is the impact of centralizing? Because when you talk about decentralization, there are three functions you're talking about. You're talking about finance, which is now being centralized. You're talking about administration, which is not being talked about. And then you're talking about political, which is the public participation and is also the legislative oversight. So we are having a problem with this government that they keep talking about revenue. And then they're not talking, revenue doesn't exist in isolation. It takes place in systems and in a context and for a purpose. So if you centralize all these funds, what happens to all those officers who are then administrating this money? What happens to the principle of subsidiarity and the principle of administration and also the public accountability that comes with decentralization? So the point is, we have a government that's very uncomfortable, that is amassing power under the guise of efficiency, that has some good schemes or good ideas, but the way they're implementing them falls short. And I always give this example that the NARC administration made a political promise of free primary education. Mm-hmm. And the Orange Democratic Party said it was our idea, they stole it, but it doesn't matter. Through the elections, this promise was made. And when they came to power, they then took that initiative and gave it to KIPRA and told KIPRA, process this for us and tell us how to implement, because there are institutions that exist to do policy. So the problem we are having is we are moving from an idea into implementation, often through some regulation, some directive, and then the legislation is crafted after the fact. Yeah. And that legislation doesn't have a policy framework. The absence of policy means we don't know the impact of making that particular decision, like I think you're looking at the health sector, you're looking at the housing sector. Who are the losers? And what's the cost of implementing that policy? These are important questions, especially when you don't have the fiscal space. So government is being very messy. And I saw in one of the papers, they were asking 3 questions. They were saying, are they clueless? Are they fumbling? Or are they competent? I would say there's also a 4th one, are they complicit? And I would say between clueless and complicit, government, that retreat, they really need to speak truth to themselves and say they have to do better for Kenyans. They have to show better leadership. They have to there's a way you implement things, even in private sector, even if in your home, you hopefully think things through, especially big decisions, before you implement. They're implementing without thinking, and they have too many hidden points. And so there are questions being asked about if everything's on the digital system, everyone's paying. So what are these extra charges? Where is that money going? If it's the housing levy, then these financiers, who are the underwriters behind the financiers? When we have organizations that do mortgages that are known to government that are already in partnership with private sector. So because, for instance, this the fuel deal, the government-to-government fuel deal went so badly, we are saying these schemes that we are being told are the solution, but don't have a policy framework, don't have an accountability framework, cannot be trusted. So government needs to, there are good ideas, whether it's the beta plan or the better plan, very good ideas. They need to be financed, but they need to be well structured, they need to be accountable.
Okay.
And that's what government agencies like the